welcome again. Hello again. I'll just start by giving you a little bit of information about the LSE to put this in context. So the LSE has about 12,000 students and about 3,000 members of staff. Our student body is predominantly overseas. So we have about 70% of our students who come from overseas, which provides some specific challenges for us in terms of digital skills development and knowing what level everyone is at. I'm the training manager in information management and technology, and our remit is to provide basic skills development for all staff and students at the organization. So, 70-20-10, quick show of hands, who's familiar with this framework, this model? Heard of it? Blended learning would be part of one of the elements. Okay, good. So I'll give you a quick run through of 70-20-10 and what it is and some of the thinking around it. So this is Dr. Robert Eichinger. I think I'm saying that correctly. And along with the research staff at the Center for Creative Leadership, he took part in a 13-year study which was published as The Lessons of Experience in 1988. And this study was to look at how the leaders, the successful leaders of the day, had gained the leadership skills that got them the positions that they were in. So this is the Center for Creative Leadership. They did this by interviewing 191 successful executives, and they asked them, how did you gain the skills and competencies that got you your current position? So here's where you get one of the doubts about 70-20-10. This is self-reported data. This is, how do you think you got those skills? There's no actual measurement of what was effective and what wasn't. In doing this work, they had 16 different categories of learning that people identified, which they recoded into 5. And those 5 were as listed. They then had to go in and take 2 of those out. So you have to take out adverse situations. You can't control for that. You can't put people into adverse situations to see how they respond. And personal experiences outside of work were not considered as well. But this actually made up 25% of the learning that these executives had identified. So there are a lot of criticisms of 70-20-10. One of them is no research ever comes out at exactly 70, 20, and 10. The other is you're removing actually 25% of the learning that people have identified as being helpful for them. But this has caught on, 70-20-10, even though it makes up 75% of the learning, and it's basically broken down into 70% of our learning is through challenging assignments, 20% is through other people, and 10% is actually through formal training or coursework. Now, this is something that, despite all of the reasons why it might not be the most legitimate research in the world, or it might be a bit convenient, it feels right. And certainly to me, it always felt right. But then I found out it's actually only right for men. So when they have tried to replicate this study, and they've done it with other groups, not only do they not get quite 70-20-10, but for women, most of the studies suggest the collaborative bit, we're learning from other people, is much higher. So the key thing I want to take away from this is 70-20-10 is very, very problematic. However, in all cases, challenging assignments and workplace learning is the most effective way that people learn. So how does this look in practice? As I said, this was published in 1988. It's quite old. In 2016, there was a Towards Maturity report that looked at how organizations, and these are commercial organizations, have applied 70-20-10 in practice. And it asked them what they were doing in each of these areas. And this was done with Charles Jennings, who you may or may not be familiar with, very big in the corporate learning and development world. And they identified different ways in which the 70, the 20, and the 10 are done in the corporate world. But that was for management, not technology, and technology is what I am interested in. So how does this play out in technology rather than in management? Well, the formal piece, to me, is about being in a classroom and knowing what buttons to push. If I follow this set of steps, will I get the outcome that I desire? That's a formal training course that we're all pretty familiar with. The social side of this for technology is maybe blended learning, maybe online courses, particularly those with a social element, so MOOCs where you're actually interacting with other people and with your instructors. It might be curated resources, so somebody's taken the time to find the resources that you need and put them all in one place for you. It could be flipped learning, but it's anything where you are learning from other people, not just the person standing at the front of the room. And then there's workflow. So how do we actually learn things about technology in the job? I think there's two ways that this happens. The first is you Google it. And for most people, that is how they learn in the flow of work. When there's something they need to do, their first protocol is Google. And that is a good thing. The other thing that happens is they lose it. Because when you are trying to learn technology in the flow of work, to do something you just need to do, it can be incredibly frustrating. How do you know what you're looking for if you don't even know what the tool is that you need to do the thing you need to do? So I think learning technology in the flow of work can be exceptionally frustrating for a lot of people. So what does this mean for what LSE has done? So I've been at LSE for quite a while, and I inherited a training program that was very successful. We used a courseware publisher who provided us with materials that we could edit. We ran self-paced workshops for students. They could come in for an hour. They could sit down with the material. They could work through it. They were supported in doing this. And they could learn the different skills that they wanted. So for me, no burning platform. Because in 2012, 2013, last time we ran the program in this way, 365 workshops, 715 attendances, 86% satisfaction. My bosses are happy with this. It's okay. I'm not happy with this, though, because we had low retention. And the information that we got from our students that were running these sessions is that somebody could do a skill and 2 pages later have forgotten how they did it. Call them over to ask them how to do it again. Participation in the sessions was going down. You do the math. 715 attendances at 365 workshops is not great. And it was costing us £12.40 per attendance, which is quite expensive, especially when there's very low retention of the skills. So while there was no push from the organization to do better, none of us were happy with what we were doing. Now, we didn't throw everything out. There are certain things that we wanted to keep. We kept the content. We had material that we could use. There's no point reinventing the wheel. We kept our student training advisors, STAs. They're a fabulous resource. We couldn't run the program without them. We kept the same metrics. So we wanted to be able to compare and measure in the next year. Did we improve? Were things better? And we kept the hour-long format and the room. And this is the best thing about formal learning, in my opinion. A dedicated time and space to do that learning. What did we change? We went from directed learning to problem solving. We encouraged working together and joint problem solving as your first port of call when you don't know how to do something. We also told them to Google it. Now, when we said it like that, it didn't work so well. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And we had a higher student training advisor to student ratio. The role of the student training advisor also changed. So they got paid a really good wage to sit in a room and wait for people to ask them questions. They got a lot of studying done because a lot of people didn't ask questions. And they moved to this new format where they were on their feet constantly and constantly working. They work their behinds off. And they don't get paid any more than they did when they did it the easy way. So how do our sessions work now? So the very first thing that we do when the students walk into the classroom, they sit down, they log in, and they get asked, have you been to one of these before? And that's the most important question they get asked. Because if they have not been to one before, there's a whole speech that they get. And that speech is going to put it into context for them and help them to understand this format, because they come in with certain expectations about what training is like. And particularly if they're coming from lectures where somebody stands at the front and talks at them, they're now going to be asked to do a lot more work themselves. So we make sure they understand what the format is like. We also make sure that they understand what's in it for them. So we make sure that they know you're going to be given a task. You're going to work through it at your own pace. I'm not going to tell you what to do. The reason I don't tell you what to do is if I do that, 2 minutes later, after you walk out of this room, you will have forgotten it. When you get stuck, talk to the people next to you. When you get stuck, use Google. If you get really stuck, I, as a student trainer, will come and help you. Now, they aren't passive. They are watching people as they go along. The room is set up, so the student trainers are standing behind them, watching what they're doing. And if they start to go really wrong, or they look like they're really struggling but not going to ask questions, they will step in and advise. The task that we give them is supposed to be like a real-world problem. So it's a bit like being given a mini project at work. Create this spreadsheet that shows X, Y, and Z, and do it so that it has this, that, and a chart. They are not told how to do it. They're not told what tools they're going to use. They're just told this is the outcome that you need to get. I've got an example here. I've got my assistant. So this is an example that we have of our pivot table course. So you can have a quick look at what they are told. We also have good practice guides, because there are certain things you're not going to just discover on your own, or you will discover them when you're in work and you make a massive mistake and you get in trouble with your boss for that. So there are certain good practice rules, things for efficiency, things for accuracy, that we provide them with. Now, we're the London School of Economics, right? We've got a lot of economics, a lot of accounting, a lot of finance, which means we do a lot of Excel. It's not all Excel, but a lot of Excel. So all the examples today are from Excel, and it's the most developed part of our program. This good practice guide is our good practice guide for Excel. Now, if you look at the task, what you might see is that it refers you to that good practice guide. So there will be a certain criteria to meet, and it tells you to look at the good practice and apply that good practice while meeting that criteria. So as I said, when they get stuck, they're encouraged to work through it. They are encouraged to talk to each other. They're encouraged to help each other as well. You've got mixed abilities in any course. And if you have a student who is very advanced or very good, we will sometimes ask them to help the people next to them. There's benefits in that for the student as well. Teaching something reinforces that learning for you. It also takes some of the pressure off the student training advisors. People work at their own pace. So I mentioned we have a lot of overseas students. Sometimes reading technical information is more difficult when English is not your first language. So they are not pressured to keep up with the rest of the class, but they can work at their own pace to work through it at whatever rate they need to. They can come back, and we often encourage them to come back if they haven't finished. And they do. Not all of them, but a lot of them will come to multiple sessions in order to complete the task. The last stage of it is once they have completed the task, they get the suggested solution. And here's one I prepared earlier. Now, the suggested solution is not what steps you take to get the answer. It tells you how we, as technology professionals, would have solved that problem. It is not the right answer. There's no right answer. If you got an accurate result, that's good. I don't care how you got there. This is maybe the most efficient way. Maybe it is the more accurate way. Maybe it's just the task or the skill that we thought you would need to know in this course. But the advantage of doing this at the end of the session and getting them to review how they did it with how we did it reinforces the learning. They're thinking back on what they did. How did I accomplish that? Did it match the way that they suggest I accomplish that? If it didn't, let me try out what they did. one of the things that the suggested solution helps with is shortcuts. So we do have a lot of students who go into financial services, and we've heard from those coming back from internships that they will go into PwC or they'll go into a bank, and the mouse will be taken away from them. And they're told, you cannot work with the mouse, you must do the shortcuts. So one thing that we do is help them to understand what those shortcuts are in those suggested solutions. Again, they're not necessarily going to pick that up just through Googling everything. So for us, the IT practicals are a blend of all the best bits of 70-20-10. It's got the formal aspect. You've got your technical experts, and you've got that dedicated time and space to do it. It's got the social aspect, and there's a real benefit here in the social aspect, not only for the students learning from other students, or even staff learning from other students, but in helping each other, sharing ideas, getting feedback on what worked and what didn't work. And they also help us. So I might have been using Excel for decades, but it doesn't mean I always have the right answer. And we've had examples of students who came up with a better example in the class than the one that we designed. And then we update our materials accordingly. And we've got all the workflow stuff. So this is a problem like a problem you might get at work. It's a full package. It's not bitty exercises that demonstrate different tools. It is start to finish a full task. It's based on the real world. We get that information from people returning, from internships, from work experience, and so on. But the most important thing for me is that there is not a right answer. There's not one way to do this. And it is all about the journey. So while you sign up to come to a pivot tables class, what I'm really teaching you is how to search and how to apply information that you have searched for to a technical problem. The real serious learning, in my opinion, in these sessions is people figuring out, I don't know how to do it, let me figure out how to do it, and let me apply what I have found to this particular task. And that is what is most transferable, not the specific button they learn to use on the toolbar. So the outcomes. So the outcomes for the participants, I don't know how well you can see this from there, but in 2013-14 we did a small pilot, so we ran both programs side by side. And we have full data up through 2016-17. In the first year, for these practicals, we had 94% satisfaction rate, up from 86% for the other format. And for the last 3 years, so including this last year, it's over 99%. That's with over 2,400 attendances, over 99% satisfaction. We are extremely proud of this. But that's just happy sheets. You know, I liked it. It was fun. The ones who don't love it are staff. Now, not all of them, but staff in particular need that prep. They are far more used to the, I'm going to sit here and you're going to tell me what to do, and I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to learn something. And they also have work pressures that the students don't necessarily have. If I've been given an hour out of my job to come and learn pivot tables, why are you asking me to Google it? I could do that at my desk. So they have to understand the role of the student trainer there to guide them, support them, and the value that they get of struggling within that supported environment. We also ask about application after the fact. So about 3 weeks after they attend a course, they get asked, have you applied those skills in your coursework, in your job? Now, not all of them do. A lot of people come just because they're interested. They haven't necessarily applied it. But those who have applied it, it went from, let's see, 86% to 100% in the last 2 years. I'm not quite sure what happened in 2015-16. We had a little dip there. But in the last 2 years, 100% of the people who tried to apply their learning were successful at doing that, which is great. The qualitative feedback is outstanding. We are particularly proud of the academic staff who come in to these sessions and have a second-year undergraduate running the session for them and they come out with comments like, I wish most of us in higher education could show the same kind of enthusiasm. So the people who come along like it, which is great. They like us, they like what we're doing. The student training advisors also get a lot out of it. So you remember I said they still get the same pay that they got when they just sat there for an hour. And we worried in that first year when we had a few who had done both. How were they going to feel about being asked to actually work a lot harder? They love it. It is challenging for them. They understand that they're having an impact. They're actually affecting people's capabilities, and they're very proud of that. You may or may not know, LSE doesn't always do that great on things like the NUS. We're super proud that students find our program working for us to be one of the best things about the LSE. Maybe it shouldn't be that way, but if it is, I will take it. So then there's the outcomes for the team and for the LSE as an organization. And these are maybe a bit more business focused, but we're still really happy about what has happened. So the light blue bar that you can see there shows the number of sessions that we ran over that 4-year period. We ran about the same number of sessions. The green bar, though, is attendance. Increased attendance by 300% over that 4-year period. And so the light blue line, that is the cost per attendance. We actually had to use a lot more student trainers in the sessions than we had previously because there's a lot more work. We still managed to have the cost of attendance through this program, simply by getting more people through the door. The dark blue bar is the increase in number of individuals, so that's an increase of 154%. And the dark green line is the reduced cost per head. So that's gone down by 21%. So for the business focused amongst you, it is an improvement. And then we have the light green bar that you can see there, which is about our capacity. Now we moved training rooms and we had half as many spaces to offer. So you can see the capacity going down, but the bookings, which is the light blue bar, going up. So we were utilizing our space much better. Many more attendances, even though we had fewer spaces to offer. We went from not having a waiting list at all, 2013-16, no waiting lists. This last year we had 1,186 people who wanted to come to a course but couldn't. What you can't see charted on there is that we previously were using 9% of our capacity, which is quite appalling in a central London university where space for rooms is like gold. And we're now using 66%. Now we have a waiting list and we're only using 66% because you still get people who don't show up. But our no-show rate has reduced from 23% down to 9%. So what's next for this program? We would like to have more courses. We want to expand this into things around programming and data science, perhaps more around effective use of PowerPoint, maybe data visualization, and so on. So we're working to increase the scale of what we're able to offer in terms of content. We are currently limited by the number of seats that we have. So I would love to get a bigger room. And I would love to be able to open it up, get rid of that waiting list, and use that to have more students coming through. Now, if you have more students coming through, we currently have a ratio of 4 students to 1 STA. I cannot ask for a lot more money to hire a lot more students as much as I would love to. So how are we going to do that? The next thing we want to test is called Puppy Bowl. And every time I say that to my staff, they look at me like I'm nuts. So let me tell you where this comes from. I'm from the States, and when I was in 9th grade, my geometry teacher used to do something called Puppy Bowl. He would hand us geometric proofs, and we'd sit at tables of 4, And we'd have to work together and try and figure out what's the proof. And when you're done, you'd go and take it to him to check. Or if you had a question, you'd go and take it to him to check. And he just sat at the front of the room, quite lazy actually. But he'd sit at the front of the room and he'd wait for people to come up and ask him questions. Lazy but a little bit genius, because if you were the one who came up to ask him questions, you had to wait your turn. And you were learning from all the people asking other questions and learning from him explaining things to them as you go through it. So I would like to do this with our student trainers. I would like to have more students in the classroom and make them work together. First protocol, work together. Second protocol is Google. Third protocol, Puppy Bowl. And finally, we'd like to share this. We think it's really successful. We think it's sound pedagogically. And we would really like to share that with other people and see, is this something that can be expanded? Can other people do this, and can they build on it? Can they do it better? We did a little trial with UCL. We gave them some of our materials. We explained to them the process. They went off and did it, and it tanked. Maybe tank is a bit hard. It didn't quite work. So what we need to do is work on how do you transfer it, and how do you work with other people so that they can sort of experience the same things. We did a second run with them. It went much, much better, and they're looking at expanding it there as well. So, it's my image credits, my references. I think all the slides and everything are going to be available, so if you do want to look at any of the history or any of the reports. And if anyone would like to work with us, if anyone else would like to know more about it, would like to try it out, then do get in touch. And that's me done. Yeah.
Can you say a little bit about the training that you give your student teachers?
Yes, very good point. So we hire students the year before. So we hired students a few months ago to start next year. The advantage there is it allows those who haven't been part of the program to sit into the program. Because if they understand it from the side of being a student, they're much more effective in delivering it. And we don't hire them for their technical skills. We do a test when they come in. We ask all the usual interview questions, but the real thing is the test. And the test is not, do you know Excel? We ask them a really tough Excel question because we want to see what happens when you don't know the answer. We want to see how they handle themselves when they're thrown in at the deep end. And those students who use a guiding technique rather than oh, let me just take the mouse and show you how to do that, they do much better. The students who don't know and help the student to Google, they do really well. So we try and select people who naturally have that kind of coaching inclination. And then in the first week of term, we bring them in for a day. We talk them through all the HR and admin stuff, and we spend about half of the day going through the TAP methodology. So I don't know if you know the TAP methodology from the Training Foundation. Some? Yep. So it's very much based on using questioning techniques to draw answers out of people and to guide their thinking rather than instructing them. So it's a kind of coaching approach to get them to think through the problem and arrive at their own answers. And they also go through an observation session. So they will observe either previous student trainers, if there are any, or they will observe one of us running a session so that they get that speech down pat. So they see what kind of questions people have, and they see how to manage the room. So it's an intensive process to get them up to speed, but once they're there, they fly, and they're brilliant. They're really brilliant.
I wanted to talk about the scalability of, because obviously lifting the weight
Yeah.
is huge
Yep.
and great. Actually, how do you make sure that those 1,000+ students aren't actually missing out and are still able to get and staff, etc., and get what they need as well?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and it is difficult to manage. We've tried different things over the years. Those waiting lists are not necessarily 1,000 individuals. That's 1,000 attempts to book. So hopefully some of those people have managed to get onto courses. but one of the comments we get a lot is put more courses on. We do it in a couple of ways. We do not release a schedule for the whole term, so we release it 1 to 2 weeks in advance. We have an extensive waiting list which automatically notifies the next person on the list to come along. When they get the joining instructions or when they get the booking, it says if you're on the waiting list, just show up on the day, because there's almost always somebody who drops out. And quite often the people who take that advice then get the spots. Student trainers also have the ability to open up 2 additional places. So there are 2 additional computers in the room that we don't use because 5 to 1 is maybe a bit much. They can, and sometimes do, allow that. We also have a mailing list, which is solely about being notified when new courses come out. So we have lots and lots of ways to try and make sure people who really want to get on the courses get first dibs, get every opportunity to show up and come along. But yes, scalability is a real issue for us. And if we could get a bigger room, I think we could do better.
Do you think there's a way to replicate what you do face-to-face somehow in an online environment?
Face-to-face,
Like, so the way that you set this out, so
yeah.
obviously people turn up in person. Have you explored whether you think it's possible to do that in an online environment, or I'm just curious?
We haven't, and that's probably more down to my prejudices than anything else. I do not like online learning, and so I probably haven't really explored whether that's possible, but it would be interesting. I mean, I think we'd love to work with people who are good at online learning and maybe see if it is something that you could do in that way. Yeah. Yeah.
I liked your point about the
Puppy bowl, yeah.
And I found that I've actually done a lot of observing teachers, and sometimes there's, I think, a worry about big groups.
Yeah.
So they'll say, oh, we need at least 3 people to facilitate it. But actually, when you take that away, when you don't have a hoverer over your shoulder helping you all the time,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more encouragement of group learning, and
Yes.
actually it's better to stand back.
Yes,
I think
yeah.
you can have a lot bigger groups than you'd imagine, even for something as intensive.
Yes.
So,
Yes, and then, as I said, I'm really hoping we can test that theory out and see how that would work, because that is the best learning, is when they're helping each other. Yeah.
How do you kind of promote sessions? Is it just online, like a timetable type thing, or how do you have staff as well? How do you...
So again, we've tried lots of different things over the years. We have a relatively new offering at LSE called LSE Life. It's a center based in the library, which is about all their academic and professional skills development. So we promote it through there because that's meant to be the one-stop shop. But only 5% of the people come from there, unfortunately. And we're hoping that's going to grow as that becomes more popular. We promote it on the training and development system, which is the online booking system for all training. So anyone who's looking for Excel is going to find that, or PowerPoint or whatever. It's on the website, and we email our department managers and tell them to tell people. Because for our students, possibly for your students as well, something that comes from their department is way more important than something that comes from us. So that's probably been the most effective way.
I think that's definitely what we need to do.
Okay? Yeah,
quick question. Do staff and students attend the same sessions, or are they separate?
they do. They attend the same sessions. We started that a while back and wondered if it would be a problem. It's not been a problem. The staff, there are some staff who are unhappy, but they keep coming back. So if you don't like it, I don't know why you keep coming back. And our student trainers, that's part of their induction is how do they deal with staff? Because it can be intimidating for them as well to know that this is an academic who's sitting down. But because it's such a collaborative, we're all in it together kind of environment, people kind of quickly warm up to it, and they all get into it. And that kind of, what Donna was saying earlier about, why are we doing this by role and so on, that kind of struck a chord as well, because they all need the same skills. And this form of training or this form of learning is legitimate for professors as well as first years.
Well, the third person I've spoken to today that has a training program, called a training program, that students and staff both work on together.
Yeah. try it.
Try,
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you all very much.